then Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld, as well as his boss, President Bush. Let's turn now to Paul Rieckhoff, founder and executive director of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, also author of Chasing Ghosts, A Soldier's Fight for America from Baghdad to Washington. Paul, as ever, much thanks for your time tonight.
Good to be with you, Keith.
Did the president not promise the troops last September that their success, if they got it, would yield homecomings?
He did, but the president has promised a lot of things over the course of this war. And I think that what's getting lost in the sauce here, as we'd say in the military, is the fact that our military is coming apart at the seams. You know, the drawdown, we can debate over whether or not the surge has actually been a success, but one thing that's almost not even up for debate anymore is that our military is falling apart. Over 500,000 troops have been overseas more than once. Over 20,000 have actually been to Iraq more than 5 times. And we're seeing retention rates go down. Recruiting is already under tremendous stress. So we've got to ask ourselves at some point, what else are we giving up to maintain these troop levels?
General Petraeus is due to give an assessment of Iraq to Congress next month. And shortly after Gates spoke today, 2 bombs went off in Baghdad. At least 20 people were killed. Should we not constantly assess our status in Iraq, and if so, why would we need to stop the drawdown for him to make an assessment in July?
Well, I think we should be constantly reassessing, to answer your question, and I think that to even project where we're going to be in July might be a little bit premature. We know that there have been some incremental security gains, but the political progress just isn't there. And as I saw on the ground, you're not issuing your American soldiers magic wands. They can't fix the plumbing. They can't get the water running. They can't get Sunnis and Shias to get along. So at some point, we've got to dig deeper beyond the military aspect here and talk about the political, economic, and diplomatic options that we need to employ in order to even give our soldiers a chance at success, whatever we're defining that to be on a given day.
The point that you just raised, that the Joint Chiefs Chairman is going to testify later this month to what you have concluded, and thousands have concluded, I'm not putting it all on your shoulders, that this war is leaving us at significant risk, that the military would not be able to respond to some new crisis, not respond fully in any event. If the president agrees to stopping the troop reductions or pausing them in Iraq, does that not make us vulnerable on every other front around the world, every one of them?
Absolutely. General George Casey, the Army Chief of Staff, has said that we have too much demand for too few people, and it means that we have to compromise in other areas. The 82nd Airborne, our ready reserve as far as a quick response force, in the spring of 2008 will have all 4 brigades of their division deployed overseas. And to put this in real perspective about how we compromise our effectiveness back home, when Hurricane Katrina happened, 1/3 of the Mississippi and Louisiana National Guard were deployed overseas, and it definitely hampered our response. So what are we going to do if there is another attack on U.S. soil, if we've got to defend some other kind of enemy? We've got all our eggs in one basket, and in many ways, I would argue we're very vulnerable. Our back door is wide open.
Sum this up for me, Paul. Gates is repeating what Petraeus had hinted at last week. Petraeus was hinted at what the men below him had hinted at the week before. A pause, a stop in the drawdown has been hinted at since before the State of the Union. So when the president said in the State of the Union that from the surge are beginning to come home, what was he doing?
I think the troops often get caught being a political football, and I think this is probably another case of that. You know, Petraeus is going to make his case, but he's only responsible for Iraq. The other military leaders at the Pentagon have got to make the global case, and I think the politicians are using troop numbers kind of as a political tool on both sides of the aisle. And anybody who thinks that Iraq isn't going to come back into the forefront of the presidential elections isn't really in touch with reality. The economy may be on the forefront, but if violence continues to go up and we have any significant increase in American casualties, this is going to be right back on the front page, and we've got to ask all the candidates, what do we do next? That's the big gorilla in the room that nobody's addressing. What specifically do we do beyond this summer?
What do you not know in a minute or less from the 2 leading Democrats that you want to know on the subject?
Well, I want to know what they're going to do about troop numbers specifically. I think we've heard it over time, but when you hear somebody, John Edwards is out now, for example, he says, I'm going to pull down combat troops, but I'm still going to guard the embassy. Well, the people that are left behind, they're going to be combat troops. So I think we've got to drill down and talk about specifics. What kind of units are we going to leave behind? Where are we going to leave them? And what's a realistic timeline for the American people to expect? I think a big problem with the Bush administration has been unrealistic expectations. We don't know for real how long we're going to be there.
Paul Rieckhoff, Executive Director of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. As always, Paul, many thanks.
Thank you, Keith.
The writers' strike is all but